But about a month later, we had a physician come in from Austin. And this particular physician ran an abortion clinic here in Austin, and it's now closed. And he was explaining to me that at his own private practice that he did abortions a little bit differently in his center. He was telling me that, I know this is going to be a surprise, but it's actually safer if a doctor can see what he's doing while he's performing surgery on someone. And I'd never really thought about it because at Planned Parenthood, we performed abortions in a blind manner. We did not use the ultrasound for anything at all except to determine how far along the woman was in her pregnancy so that we would know how much to charge her for her abortion. And then the ultrasound was moved away and the doctor had a suction tube and he just blindly poked around inside the woman's uterus until he had enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. That glass jar went into a pass-through in the wall. On the other side of that wall was a lab called the POC lab. Now, what does POC stand for? Products of conception. What's that? That's the baby, right? But you can't say baby inside of an abortion clinic. So we said POC or POC, or if the staff was feeling funny, they said it stood for pieces of children. And inside of that POC lab, the POC technician would dump everything out into a glass baking dish, reassemble the parts of the baby, then put all of the pieces of every baby that we aborted that day into a plastic bag. That plastic bag went into a freezer, which the staff called the nursery. And once a week, Stericycle, or it was always Stericycle for us, would come and pick up the aborted babies, take them back to their facility to be incinerated. Now, I knew that that's the way that abortion takes place. That's the only way that I knew abortion to take place because I had only worked at Planned Parenthood. But this visiting physician came back one day and he told me that if the right patient presented herself, that he would show me what this looked like. That he thought it would be a good learning experience for me. And I stood there, I did the ultrasound. Now, I'm not medically trained in any way. I'm not a doctor or nurse, none of that. I'm not certified in ultrasonography. But I am a licensed therapist, so if you're having a bad day, we can talk about it. But if you need some sort of medical procedure, I'm really not your gal. But inside of Planned Parenthood, they don't care. You just have to be willing, and you go through a 1-hour in-house training with another staff member who is also not medically trained. And once you go through that training, they set you loose to perform invasive medical procedures on women. And I had gone through that training, and so in their eyes, I was qualified. We did the measurement. We found that the baby was 13 weeks along. And I remember looking at the screen and thinking, wow, that really looks like a baby. I mean, I know it's not because Planned Parenthood told me it's not. Now, I have an 8-year-old daughter. I've only been out of the industry 6 years. I had my daughter when I worked at Planned Parenthood, and when I was pregnant with Grace, she was a baby. But she was a baby because she was wanted. And if a baby is unwanted, then it just suddenly becomes tissue, something to be discarded. And so I watched that screen. I watched the suction tube. The suction wasn't yet turned on. I watched that go into the woman's uterus. And I watched as it went right up next to the side of this child and touched his side, he jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away from that abortion instrument. But there was nowhere for him to go. The doctor asked the technician to turn on the suction machine, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the suction was turned on, and I guess people make the assumption that what I saw next was the worst part, that seeing a child become dismembered in his mother's womb would be the worst part. And that was bad, but that wasn't the worst thing. The worst part was that when I had the opportunity to intervene on behalf of this child and his mother, I did nothing. I mean, I remember wanting to sit this woman up and to say, look what is happening to your baby. But I didn't. I just stood there and I watched. A few days later, I decided I could no longer work at Planned Parenthood. I didn't know what I was going to do.